based on the feedback from some of my previous videos, as well as interviews I've done, I expect this video to be rather divisive amongst you. A good chunk of you seem to agree that WotC, aka Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro are not headed in a great direction right now. The looming threat of corporate greed seems to be driving the game down a path that may very well turn WotC into the EA of tabletop games. I'm not going to go over the details of the conjectures in the community, quotes that we've heard, possible insider statements, etc. My information is third-party at best, or often even further removed. If you want more details about this shit show happening with WotC, Hasbro, and D&D, go check out someone like Nerd Immersion or Treyant Monk. Nerd Immersion was especially funny to watch, with him literally yelling, "I'm sorry, what?" after reading about WotC trying to get some creators to sign an NDA. Yeah, his video can explain much better than I can. That's not what this is about. This video asks the question, if WotC does go full EA and stops unmonetizing Dungeons & Dragons, as they allegedly said, is this going to be such a bad apocalyptic end time as so many gamers, many of which are newer gamers, have said? Here's the thing, I think the answer is no. If the D&D community itself fractures and splinters other systems, then maybe the popularity of the whole hobby may wane a little, but I think the only people that are really concerned about this, in general, are the newer players, ones that have not experienced things like other RPG systems or edition changes. I've recently had people ask me what my thoughts were on D&D going through an edition change so soon, but it's not soon. Edition changes in D&D I think happen more often than a lot of you have thought. D&D 3rd edition was only around for a couple of years when 3.5 came out, which itself has only lasted a few more years on top of that before 4th edition, and we know how that went. By the time 1 D&D comes out, D&D 5e will have had an entire decade. That's not the longest edition, but it's pretty decent. Remember, D&D 5e came out in 2014, and 1 D&D is scheduled for 2024. That's a pretty decent run for an edition of a tabletop RPG, especially when you take into account that WotC is owned by Hasbro, a large and rather greedy corporation. But here's why the longer someone has been playing RPGs, the less worried they are about all of this. Because for those that have been around, WotC and D&D could burn out in a dumpster fire, and honestly, it's not that big of a deal. There's 2 reasons for that. Reason 1, for the majority of players and GMs, the longer you've played in the hobby, the higher chances that most of the content you play with is homebrew or third party. You're playing in your own campaign setting, because maybe your group crafted it together and it's grown with you over time, so you know it well. Or you're creating your own adventures because you've already played through the officially published ones and most of them are meh at best. You're making your own classes, or races, or just finding all sorts of cool content online in free communities, on Reddit, Discord, and 4chan's B-board. Okay, no, don't go there. I've seen things I can't unsee. But you get it. The craptastic books that WotC half-asses onto shelves aren't worth it right now. If it only gets worse, are you really missing out? Reason 2, there are other systems out there. Systems that I'm going to just say it, and you're going to hate me for it. Systems that are better than Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or at least better suited for you. D&D 5e has a decent base to it, but for an RPG to be really great, it usually needs one of 2 major things. A specific niche or focus in the style of the game that makes it worth it, or maybe a more generic style of game, but with a very good, supportive, and wonderful set of mechanics that let you do some truly special things. Dungeons & Dragons has become kind of bland and generic with its styling, having lost its hardcore sword and sorcery roots many years back, while still only having a simple mechanical base to it, all things considered. It's not a terrible system, it's fairly smooth and relatively well balanced, but it's not an inspiring system by any means. It's like room temperature milk. If you like milk, it's not as refreshing as cold milk from the fridge, but I mean, it's still drinkable. Unless you're lactose intolerant, then you'd much rather drink an entirely different liquid anyways. Else you'll shit your brains out while fumigating your loved ones straight out of the house. If I play the Alien RPG, Ryutama, or Tales from the Loop, I can feel the flavor of the game all through the system. And that's what makes it unique. If I play Cypher or Fate, Although they don't have a style focus, their interesting, supportive, and unique mechanics make the systems worth playing. Even if you wanted to play in something very much like D&D, there have been tons of offshoots over the years to fill that void. Pathfinder, of course, is one of the most famous examples. Paizo being a company that got its big break the last time WotC tried messing with things in a bad way. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a lot more rule-heavy than 5e, but has a single world that's been expanded upon pretty heavily, and its share of somewhat unique mechanics to a D20 style system. But you also have games like Tiny Dungeon RPG, Dungeon World, 5 Torches Deep, Burning Wheel, and so many more, all games with a sort of similar feel to D&D, but with their own twists and views in the genre that make it really worth trying. There's a lot of Doomsayers out there talking about the Hasbro Wizards thing destroying our beloved hobby with corporate greed. And if you're a newer player, then yeah, probably does feel that way. But maybe this is a time to try and make your own content, or try a new system. Play tabletop RPGs in ways you didn't even realize existed. Turn what feels like doom and gloom into opportunity for experiences and expanding your RPG toolbox. It wasn't long ago I made a video where I mentioned some things that I actually borrowed from a multitude of other systems to bring with me into any RPG, like collectible tools. The more you experiment, the more fun tips, tricks, and awesome bits you'll learn. Other RPGs can teach you new things. Fate taught me to really focus on the narrative before the mechanics. Cypher taught me the importance of renewability and a little chaos improving gameplay. Shadowrun and Twilight 2000 taught me that sometimes you need a literal bucket of dice just to feel like a badass. Vampire the Masquerade taught me that there's still a little bit of an edgelord deep down inside of me somewhere, just waiting for me to find some guy liner and to let you know how much my parents don't understand me. Is Wizards/Hasbro leading D&D towards ultimate disaster? I don't know. I haven't the foggiest. I have my guesses, but I don't know for sure. Not really. Is it that big of a deal for me personally? No. At the moment, I live stream a Cypher game on Sundays. I play a Pathfinder game on Thursdays, and as of recording this at this moment, I'm planning an Alien RPG one-shot for tomorrow. I'm still in some D&D games, but it's far and away not my focus. Even the main DM that runs those D&D games for me will soon be switching up all of his games to use the Retroverse books that use the D&D 5e system as its base, but is a completely different setup for classes and feeling and style and everything, just because he's tired of the crap by Wizards. So don't worry. And trust me, D&D has been on shaky ground before, and all that's ever done, it's broken the temporary majority and allowed all those in the hobby to expand and make new things. You're all going to be fine.